Secretary. We've got with us today 4 people who are all experts in sustainability in one shape or another. So I won't talk too much because I am not. We've got Toby from the Sustainable Wine Roundtable. We've got Rob from Bortoli, Rebecca, who is the North South Wine Sustainability Manager, and we have Louisa from Old Chapel Cellars down in Truro, who are, I think, the UK's first B Corp sustainably certified wine merchant. I'm just going to ask them to all just briefly introduce themselves and just sort of answer perhaps why sustainability is important to them. Let's just start with Toby.
Thanks very much, everyone, for the invitation to join you today. I am one of the founders of the Sustainable Wine Roundtable. I also run another business called Innovation Forum, through which I've worked on sustainable agriculture issues for about 20 years. The Sustainable Wine Roundtable was set up a few years ago in order to create what we're calling a common language around sustainability, and we're made up of almost 100 wine businesses from up to a dozen retailers to 5-hectare producers all over the world. But in the middle there, of course, we've got a lot of importers, distributors, and some very large vineyard operators as members. And our role is really to convene and then to catalyze meaningful work around sustainability. And very briefly, we're doing that through the creation of what we call a global reference standard on sustainability, which is not a standard for certification. We don't need another eco label. It's more a compendium of issues that need to be tackled in order to be more sustainable, and that leads to the development through working groups of management tools, recommendations, and outputs. And just finally, we've just created what we call a bottle weight accord with up to about 10 retailers who are in the process of agreeing maximum bottle weight that they will be using in certain categories over the next couple of years. So that's our kind of first big win.
Great, thanks. Let's go to Rob.
Yeah, Rob from Bortoli, New South Wales in Australia. We started in a very bad place 15 years ago. There was a day during vintage when I could smell our winery from 10 kilometres away, and it was shortly after that that we started the sustainability journey, getting ourselves back on track in terms of looking after our trade waste firstly, and then from then on, basically trying to catch up to where we should be, and then also get ourselves through to the point where we can claim that we're in a fairly good spot now. So 15 years later, we're the only platinum or recognised government site in New South Wales recognised for 15 years of R&D and sustainability. So we've gone from being corporate bad boys to a great place.
Thanks. Let's ask Louisa.
Hi everyone, my name's Louisa and I'm co-owner at Old Chapel Cellars in Truro in Cornwall, which is a wine merchant online and also wholesaler to the trade. And sustainability is important to us, obviously, because of the climate crisis going on. But for us, it's about the whole circle of sustainability. So also about individuals and business. And if our business is sustainable, we can provide employment and careers, which down here in Cornwall, there's a fair few issues with it being one of the poorest counties in Northern Europe. And if our business is sustainable, it helps our community and the whole thing goes round. So for us, sustainability is about the people and the planet, and of course, making profit so that we're still here in the future.
Great, thanks. And Rebecca?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Murphy, and I've worked with North South Wines since it was set up 9 years ago in lots of different roles, from sales and technical and buying. But the last 2 years I've been working on our B Corp submission, and we're being audited for that at the moment. So I've been really helping frame our sustainability strategy and kind of drive that forward. At North South Wines, we've always looked at sourcing sustainable products. So from the beginning, we were considering organic, biodynamic, family-run businesses. When Kim visited one of our wineries that we now work with, called Scheid in California, she really saw the kind of the whole approach to sustainability from end to end, looking at environmental and social, and really wanted North South Wines to be framed in that way. So came back and looked at the best approach for us to kind of achieve that, and that was looking, we decided to go down the B Corp route and use their kind of impact assessment. So we've now been really looking at the whole business, and looking at how we can be a kind of a positive force for good, and looking inwardly and outwardly really at the business to be more sustainable. So that's what a big part of my role is framing that strategy now as sustainability manager.
Great, thank you. Just to say, as if people have questions as we go along, we'll be sending this video out to everybody who has signed up to attend. So whether you've managed to make the jump or not, we'll make sure you get the video. But if you have questions, pop them in the chat function, and we'll pick them up as we go along. I think it's fair to say also that if anybody has wants to talk more about sustainability, then Rebecca is really keen to talk to anyone and have a conversation. So she'll you can drop her a note through the office, and she'll get in touch with you to perhaps arrange to have a phone call or something, just to chat through things that you can be doing or take things further from today. It may be that we can put you in touch with other people, and we'll try and pull together some resources. So Toby, starting with you really, at a kind of an overall view of what sustainability is. We've really kind of heard from Rebecca there and from Louisa about that it's not just about environmental, but there's the social and the financial side of sustainability, and making sure that businesses have that kind of whole holistic approach. What then, for the wine industry, particularly for independent wine merchants, do you think are the big challenges that we as an industry face?
Well, that's a great question, Tim, and one I've been wrestling with, because in some ways it's easier to talk about the challenges and tackling them for the big players, really, because they've got the carbon targets, they've got the reach, they've got the resources. So it's kind of easy for us to say to retailers, well, not easy, but we can do it. You've all got carbon targets. We all want to cut bottle weight. Let's agree on a realistic way of doing that in certain categories. But for independents, it is tough. And I think we should all have a lot of empathy and sympathy with the challenges. Clearly, acting on climate change is absolutely key. Trying to shift away from fossil fuels is vital, but then easy to say, how do you do it? You're not in control necessarily of your logistics network. Now, lots of those companies are trying to do lots of things. DHL have been for example, a champion on logistics sustainability, or tried to be for a long time. So clearly carbon is a factor. And if we can play a role in reducing bottle weight, that will save everybody money, one would hope, over time, once we get the metrics and incentives right. As you say, Tim, there are other factors in sustainability, not least the fact that an awful lot of wine producers don't make a living income. There's too much land under vine. Bordeaux has 20% of their production, which goes unsold. So what happens to that land in the long term? There are all sorts of challenges in the industry. The question is, as an independent wholesaler or retailer, what can you do about it? And I think starting the conversation with customers over impact and expectations is really key. And what do I mean by that? Well, we've all got very hung up on organic over the last 10 or 15 years. It's seen as the one thing that's penetrated consumer mindsets on sustainability. But if you look at the numbers, organic and biodynamic approaches, I love a lot of those vineyards, by the way, they make some great wines. How scalable are they, and what is the real impact on land use and on carbon emissions? If you talk to Miguel Torres of the Torres family, he'll talk about all the numbers that surrounding the fact that organic producers can end up having a higher carbon footprint, for example. And we see a lot of heavy glass bottles in that space. So starting the conversation about what do we actually mean by sustainability? What do consumers and those buying your wine want and expect? And I think what I've noticed over the years is they don't expect perfection. They want to know the story of change. So how do we talk about the story of change? And wine has this incredible benefit, this incredible advantage of being traceable, which other goods just don't have. It's an incredible advantage. So how do we use that to tell the story of how producers who are trying to do the right thing, a bit like our colleague earlier, was it Rob, I think, talking about, you know, the journey into sustainability you've been on. How do you help tell that story? And one example, when I was preparing for this, I looked up independent wholesalers, and I saw Davies Wine Merchants on that list. Now, I know Davies in the UK, they import Chateau Georges Set, which is a Fronsac producer run by a friend of mine and a member of the Wine Roundtable, Sally Evans. She has created the most sustainable 5-hectare vineyard she can from scratch over the last 7 or 8 years. And she's not doing it down the sort of organic biodynamic route, and for reasons that she can explain really well. If you go on her website, you look at her story, she has got the most brilliant story of trying to create a sustainable wine from a small producer in a difficult climate that I've seen, probably ever seen actually, without relying on this kind of organic biodynamic eco-labeling thing, which, as we know, can be quite problematic. So I think that example is a really good one. What could someone like Davies do to tell the story of Chateau Georges Set from Fronsac and Sally Evans's sustainability journey as a small producer? Customers would love to hear that story because it's real, and that's the kind of thing we want. So I think that's a good place to start.
Great, thank you. You've talked a little bit about carbon there. I haven't prepared you for this question, but we hear a lot about carbon, and we see people claiming carbon neutrality and all that kind of things. And I suppose it goes alongside the organic certification, in that we need to perhaps think those sort of certifications aren't necessarily the be all and end all, particularly when, you know, I don't know how much it's true, but what we read about a lot of the offsetting for carbon is that people just write a check and then think nothing more of it. How do we then take kind of things like carbon? What can we do? I suppose it's probably a question almost for Rob rather than for Toby, perhaps, who's now Rob's going to give me death stares. But how do we as an industry think about things like carbon more sensibly, rather than just deciding we're going to offset?
Well, I could say something briefly, if you like, and then hand over.
Yeah, do.
I'm more of an expert. I don't mean to cut in there, Rob, but I mean, so the answer to offsetting is insetting, right?
Okay. Yep.
If you want to do credible carbon offsets, and there are some, and we work with some of the providers through my other business, there are some brilliant REDD+ projects out there that make a real difference. You can't afford them. We can't afford them. You won't be able to afford them. There aren't enough of them. So therefore we have insetting, which is where all the GHG guidance for large companies, for our retail members, is going to drive carbon action in the future. What is insetting? Well, it's a terrible term, but effectively, let me give you an example. One of our retail members has a budget for carbon offsets of, let's say, £300,000. Now, what's the best use of that £300,000? Is it to go and buy carbon offsets, which at a high enough price might be quite good, but at a low price probably won't be? Or do they take that money and they invest that back into the land where the grapes are being grown to make wines that they sell? And that's called insetting. And under the guidance around Scope 3 carbon emissions from the GHG protocol, you're going to see a lot more focus on this. And that is a great way of putting money back into the land, supporting, let's say, the cork forest estates of Portugal, who sequester enormous amounts of carbon. And through the Sustainable Wine Roundtable, we are currently exploring what an insetting scheme for wine will look like. And what I mean by that is, let's say we have this retailer has this money. How can we use that money to get members of the roundtable who are producers to sequester more carbon in their vineyards by doing nature positive approaches, count that carbon, count that progress, and get paid for it? That gives the retailer a great story. It gives the landowner, the wine producer, cash resources to improve nature and do more agroforestry, and so on. So that's just one example of what can be done.
Great, thank you. So moving then down through the supply chain, coming to Rob, what are the key things, I suppose, that Bortoli do that other wineries do, not just to sequester carbon, but also to be more sustainable in that kind of more holistic route?
Yeah, all we've seen of carbon sequestration systems is problems. It comes down to how do you actually prove that you're actually doing what you do. So I'm afraid it does come back to certification in a lot of ways. You say, in all classic quality systems, you plan, do, check, act. Essentially, you plan to do something. Once you do it, you check that it is actually working, and then adjust your process as you go along. So, I've seen some horror stories here in Australia where money's gone into carbon sequestration type projects, and it's just basically it is basically a bad system. So we are very much in the zone where if you can't control it yourself, don't even add it to the list of things you do. So offsetting is not something that we'd actually countenance in that true sense. If we were going to look at carbon sequestration, we'd do it on our farms, essentially. So at the moment, we're doing trials on soil management and making, trialing various composts or various, organic teas, or there's all sorts of things we can do to get the organic carbon levels up. Get the carbon levels up in our soil. But dodgy programs are dodgy programs, so we won't touch them.
Very good. And then, so what, in terms of the overall sustainability things, can you touch on or talk about some of the things that you're doing and some of the journey that you've been on to get there?
We could sit here for hours talking about what we've done in 15 years, obviously, but if we just hone it down to some of the things that we've done, is number one is the first target is always to meet and exceed our legal requirements. So a winery of our size, we have to do EPA licensing. We've also got various consent conditions on our properties around how we manage what we do in relation to our, what our local government requires and our state government requires. So those sorts of things must happen. Then after that, I think historically, we look at sustainability. Historically, sustainability was about intergenerational fairness. So, a family company gets this intergenerational fairness or sustainability concept. But what it has morphed into over the years since the late 80s is probably something closer to a quality system. So essentially that's what we've chosen to do is actually morph our corporate social responsibility environmental stuff into quality systems so that we can audit them and check them and have them validated by third parties. The big thing though that's come out of that for us is this whole concept of what do we target immediately. And for us 15 years ago it was no sodium and use water wisely. The Murray-Darling Basin where we work is a high sodium area. Historically it is a hugely old area that was probably under an inland sea many years ago. So sodium levels are massive. So we've chosen that to become a no sodium winery, for example. And if we use water, we use it 2 and 3 times if we can. So those are the two driving forces behind all the things we do, and it's set us up for this whole sustainability journey and research and development for which we're recognised.
Excellent. And then do you do, aside from water and sodium, do you do other things in terms of power efficiency, vineyard practices?
Again, I said, if you ask me, I could spend hours on this, but
sure.
Just for example, our vineyards are recognised as sustainable wine growing certified vineyards in Australia. They all come under the Fresh Care Environmental Certification Program. We are the Sustainable Advantage Platinum site. We are an APCO site in Australia. So we go around, make sure that we measure up to the requirements of third parties wherever we do things where we, where we can be measured. I mean, even right now, we're basically putting another 1.2 megawatts of photovoltaic cells, which takes us up to a point where we actually, for any larger, we have to license our cells as a power station. We've got so much, electrical photovoltaic power in place. So we've touched on everything from packaging efficiencies through to winery electrical usage, through refinements in refrigeration, right through to even just behavioural stuff around manufacturing execution systems. So we have a catchphrase is "Don't take it, don't make it, don't send it." The classic Japanese concept of not making waste. So yeah, don't accept stuff that's out of spec, don't make stuff that's out of spec, don't send stuff that's out of spec, so that you just don't waste your activity internally. So it touches everything we do as a business.
Great, thank you. And then obviously you then work with you work with North South Wines, but wineries often then work with a distributor. So coming to Rebecca, what do we as a distributor, what do distributors need to consider when they are bringing wines in themselves, what they're selling, and what do we need to be looking at in terms of offering a more sustainable product for our customers to be able to sell?
I think there's two key elements to it. First of all, we need to look inwardly at our business and the impact of our operations. And then we need to look through our kind of whole supply chain. So obviously speaking to Rob and the business that they have at Bortoli is very different to some of the businesses for some of our other suppliers. So we've been working very closely with all of our suppliers to understand, if they have a certification, if they have certain actions that they have in place or are putting in place to limit their impact, and really kind of make sure that we're all on the same page and working towards the same goals. And that will look different for all of our suppliers, depending on their kind of size, what they're able to put in place, and the way they're kind of set up as a business. So we've always focused on working with, from the beginning, we've always focused on working with organic, biodynamic, family-run businesses. So it was quite easy for me, really, from the supply base we had, because we already had a very kind of conscious supply base, like working with all of them, understanding what they're doing, and really putting actions in place to make improvements. So we've obviously got that side of it, the product we source, and then we've got the packaging. So I've been working very closely with the suppliers on packaging data as well, looking at every element from the bottle weight to the recycled content to the whether the labels or corks are FSC certified, and then putting targets in place across all of our products in making improvements in that to increase the recycled content, to lower the bottle weight. And that's something we're working with all of our suppliers on as well. And then we've got the actual shipping of the product. So we've got now a policy in place around the choices we make in the shipping, choosing rail over road, and working with our service providers to make sure they understand how important this is to us, and that we're all on the same page in the way we're kind of working towards improving the impact. So you've got the kind of the supply chain element of it, but then we really need to make sure that we as a business are ingraining all of our decisions within North South Wines, consider people and the planet as well as profit. So there's been the last 2 years we've worked really hard to make sure every element within North South Wines is sustainable. So that's talking to our customers and our staff and getting feedback and acting on that feedback, and then putting things in place such as we've got a community scheme, community and charity hour scheme, where all members of staff get 20 paid hours to work with charities or communities of their choice. Because of the way we're structured as a business, although we have an office in West Drayton, most of us work from home. So to look at our community as a business was quite tricky, because not many people really felt that the community was West Drayton. So the way we got around that was by giving everyone paid hours to do something that was meaningful to them. And that's why we did with the paid hours. And then we've done lots of things environmentally as well as a business. So we've calculated our scope 1 and 2 emissions. So that's around the emissions that we own as a business or are controlled by our company. We haven't calculated our full scope 3 yet. We're in the process of scope 3, which is the kind of the broader consequence of the activities of the company, those calculations. But for our scope 1 and 2 emissions, we're working towards being 100% renewable energy. And then just lots of little things, like we've changed the light bulbs, we now compost in the office. Like there's so many little steps that we've kind of taken that all make kind of a big change. And then we've put an electric car scheme in place for our sales team. So it was really important because of where we're situated within the supply chain as well, for us to make sure that we were walking the walk, and we've put the things in place for us as a business, but we then look throughout the whole supply chain and talk to every different element and make sure that all the people we work with are working to make improvements and working with us on that.
And I guess that goes back to, for us as a distributor, that goes back then to what Toby was saying about making sure that the stories of sustainability are fed through down the chain, because for an independent wine merchant wanting to be more sustainable, they need to understand, whether it's whoever the producer is or whichever the importer is, where their costs are and what they're looking at. So it doesn't matter whether it's North South Wines or whether it's, I don't know who else is really good with sustainability from an import distributor point of view, but it's knowing who the people who are working on these things hard are. I don't think there's anybody who isn't these days. It seems everybody's got sustainability as a much bigger project. So it's just trying to help then our customers, independent wine merchants, to really understand where things are at, which brings us to Louisa, who, for a lot of people who are watching this either now or on the video later, Louisa is kind of the person you probably most want to listen to in some ways. As someone, she's going to laugh, but as someone who's done in the same shoes as everybody else is in, and so knowing what you've done and the steps you've taken will be really key for helping them to think through what everybody else can sort of put into place. So the first thing is, what have you done? What changes have you made to be more sustainable?
Well, I'll answer that, but first of all, I feel following Toby, Rob and Rebecca should first start at the big picture of supply chain and then come down to the changes we've made. And the reason for that is that as a small independent merchant, you have very little sway on the logistics part of the full supply chain. And that's why I have total admiration for the bigger businesses that have a lot stricter rules, and it's a much bigger beast, and yet actually you have more power to influence those. And that's brilliant. So Rebecca, when you said about, you insist on doing rail rather than road, as a smaller independent, we can't influence that. If it's coming out of Italy, you hope it'll be by rail, but the transporters don't give you that choice for someone of our size. So it's really essential for the bigger wine businesses, and especially organizations like Toby's, the Sustainable Wine Roundtable, to have these influences. And as a smaller independent, I can find it quite overwhelming of like, how do we make getting our wine moved around the world and down to Cornwall? So actually, Tim, then coming back to the question, how do we make our changes and to be more sustainable? I look at it in much more bite-sized pieces, and in every decision we make, it's like, okay, well, what is the best thing here for the environment, for our colleagues, for our customers, for everyone? So although these might not sound like much, they kind of add up. For example, we have an old diesel van. It's one of those where we're probably going to use it until it dies rather than just scrapping it, but we needed a backup plan, potentially a second vehicle won't go into the details, but we have a really old chapel. That's why we're called Old Chapel Cellars, and it's not set up for electric vehicle charging, and there were other limitations. So we're like, right, well, we don't really want to buy another diesel van. And so when we were looking at our distribution strategy last year, the end result was that we partnered with a new carbon-free courier down here. And that's been amazing because it has actually reduced our vehicle mileage and therefore reduced our emissions. And they now do all our retail and wholesale deliveries. And actually, because of the service they provide compared to us, because we're a very small team and one van, it's actually improved our service. So that's good for the environment. It's creating employment for another small business. And it's also helping our business and our customers. Another thing, we just try and be paperless. It's really easy just to print stuff, isn't it? Just, oh yeah, we'll just print a copy of that. But we don't. We try to be paperless on everything: deliveries, orders, invoices, as much as we can. And then we set targets to reduce things like our water that we use. Literally in the toilet, we reduce the cistern level. It's really simple, but it reduced our water usage, and we monitor that. We set a target to reduce our refuse. So literally like, right, let's see if we can reduce our pickup from fortnightly to monthly. And then when we realized that we're not even filling the bin over a month. I should point out here, we are only 5 colleagues, we're 6 now, so it's probably different amounts. And then we were like, actually, let's only arrange a bin collection when we need it. And we got it to about once every 8 weeks, but then we had loads of flies. So actually we did go back to the monthly pickup. So just little things, and obviously our emissions. We reduced. We invested in a cardboard converter. So obviously all our wine is in cardboard boxes, and we reuse them for deliveries and stuff, but actually we have a lot of cardboard boxes. At the same time, as any merchant will know, sending wine out, the whole courier thing is a real headache. You get breakages, whoever you use. And so we got a cardboard converter, which then shreds our cardboard, which we add to the packaging. Even though we use pulp safe and everything that is all good, we want to make sure those bottles arrive unbroken, and it's also reusing our cardboard, not just recycling it. And then this will sound really simple, but it's really effective. Just having conversations with our colleagues, you know, and it might be, oh, did you know that Body Shop is a really good organization in what they do, and they're B Corp certified. So for B Corp month in March, my colleague Meg wandered down the road, went into Body Shop and was like, should we do like a free giveaway for B Corp month? And so that was great. But at the same time, my colleague Meg was like, oh, and they've got refillable shampoo. Guess what? She now uses refillable shampoo. So it sounds silly, but all these small things is how independence can actually make a difference, because on our own, we can't sort the climate crisis, but actually, if we're all making small changes, we can. And that goes, it can be our colleagues, it can be customers, suppliers, whoever it is, but just, you know, even just talking about what we do and what B Corp means, suddenly people start recognizing the logo and kind of understanding it more. So as silly as what do we do? Well, we have conversations, is like whatever, but actually I think word of mouth is really important. And then we try and work with our local community for things like hiring. So we want to try and always recruit locally because of the jobs, careers and employment situation here in Cornwall. And we work with the local college and things like that. And the community for that is really key. It's an incredible network for whatever your business is, just talking to people. And then I suppose bringing it back to wine, the other thing that we feel really strongly about are different formats. Another whole massive conversation. Obviously, wine is going to be in glass. We need the glass to be lighter weight. Glass is going to be around for the foreseeable, but we really embrace cans. I've always loved cans of wine since they started several years ago. And I just think they are so versatile. They're so fun. They take a lot of the pretense out of wine, and the quality is great, and there's so many available now. We also stock 20-litre key keg wine, and we use that in customer outlet, and we use it in our shop to do refillable wine. And that's it's been a challenge to set it up, but actually it's really surprised me how it's taken off since it started just a few weeks ago. So yeah, just how have we made change? We've just done small steps, and hopefully all together we're reducing our impact and being more positive and being a better business.
Great, thanks.
Sorry,
And
was that really long?
No, that's really good. And have you seen sort of, obviously you've made all this investment, and it's worthwhile doing in its own right, because we all want to have a planet that is kept more how it is today, or even better than today if we could get there, but we want to stop it getting worse, certainly. And we want to have communities that are still vibrant and alive, and we want to have businesses that can be successful. Have you seen, having sort of gone down the more sustainable route, what sort of has been the real benefits that you've seen for you as a business?
I think there are two things to that. First is internally. The whole reason it kind of came about is when I joined co-owner Jamie in the business 2 years ago, I just realized that we kind of shared the same values on stuff. And then I was really interested in the B Corp certification, and then that sort of snowballed. Well, it happened. So that was good. We certified last year. But it means that inwardly it is making us a better business. And any of our colleagues that come in, we talk about it a lot and do some training on it, and it just makes us better. And it feels good as well, because it is a daily conversation in life, the climate situation. And actually, if we're all aware of it, maybe we can actually together do something about it. And then externally, it has benefited us both regionally. There's a very strong B Corp movement in Cornwall, so that's been interesting for networking, and also with the Chamber of Commerce in Cornwall. It has opened opportunities across our business. So by being more sustainable, our customers are more invested to purchase from us. It's brought in new customers, both online as well. People have seen that we are B Corp certified and chosen to purchase from us, and also in the wholesale trade as well. So across the spectrum of our customer base, it's been beneficial.
Great, thank you. And I suppose the thing, like you say, is that indies can't do big things, but everybody can do something. And I don't know if every indie saved 1 kilogram of carbon a month, which doesn't sound like a huge amount, but that's a ton a month. And then you're suddenly looking, because there's roughly 1,000 indies out there. So if all small businesses do a little bit, actually it's quite big if everybody gets behind it and does it together.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got the reduction of miles as well. If more people are shopping locally, then that's good. And also our colleagues, sorry, Rebecca, you mentioned that most of you aren't in West Drayton, but here we ask any colleagues that are within walking distance of the shop to walk to work.
Great. So I'm going to come back to Toby as we sort of head towards the finish point. If there's one thing that a small wine business can do, or one thing to take away from today, what one thing would you would you put forward as the thing they could try and do, or they should take away?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tim. And Louisa, congratulations to the work you guys are doing. It's fabulous. I've been sat here listening, going, this is absolutely brilliant. And these are the kind of conversations that we have with the larger players in wine. And they have said to us, surprising to us, you know, that the sharing of knowledge has been incredibly important for them, to give them the confidence that they can go further. And we always assume that large companies can kind of do all this stuff and they know what they're doing and they have all this confidence. They're just as scared as everybody else, the people who work in these big companies. And so that there's a real value in, to your point, Tim, in Louisa, in just sharing what you've done in the way that you've shared it today as widely as possible, because that gives people the confidence that they can do something. And then if we can together at some point have the equivalent of the bottle weight accord we have with the retailers, with organizations like yours, where we simply say, we all agree that these things are unacceptable. You know, a kilo of empty glass, we will not sell it, you know, with wine in it. That could be a place we could get to. So I think, to answer your question, Tim, it's about telling those stories. And we would love to help play a role in doing that. You know, we're a very small organization at the moment. We're very focused on a few areas: bottle weight, label standards, our global reference standard. But over time, we would love to work with organizations like yours and the 1,000 independents you mentioned to help share this knowledge and give people the confidence that they can do these things as well. And over time, that could lead to a more consistent approach from everyone, which sends the right message back down the supply chain of what's acceptable and what isn't. And that's where we get the scaled impact. So yeah, huge congratulations, and please keep doing what you're doing. And Rob too, inspiring stories there. I'd love to know what it was that you smelt from 10 kilometers away, but perhaps you can tell me that separately. I'll stop now.
Great. And then Rob, if there's one takeaway that you think an independent merchant, or one thing that any business can implement, that would be a quick.
And quickly, I'd just say, just look for provenance. In a lot of ways, you know, when you're buying something, where's the wine produced? What practice does the producer use? You know, look for people who prioritise sustainability and stewardship. I think so. I just go back to look for people that say what they're going to do, do what they say they're going to do. It's simple as that.
Great. And then Rebecca.
Well, I think the key thing for me is there's a lot of potential with business to be the kind of driving force for change. We need change at every level, from government to individuals. But we were inspired by Scheid all those years ago when Kim visited them to make change within our business. And then if we can inspire other businesses, and like what Louisa's doing, if you know, with what Old Chaps are doing, if we can inspire other businesses to change, then it can be a kind of snowball effect. But also, if a business is acting sustainability, then the people that work for them will want to act more sustainably as well. And it's something we've been really working with within our businesses, is to involve every team member in different elements of it. So we've divided different parts of our sustainability strategy out to different members, different team areas, and trying to just get everybody involved and to kind of live and breathe it. So if you as a business make those positive changes, then hopefully your workers will live and breathe it more, and that then is a kind of snowball effect as well. So yeah, I just think as businesses we have a really kind of important part to play in kind of driving change.
Great, thank you. And then back to Louisa. If an indie's gonna come off this call and decide to make one change, what would you tell them to do?
Just to consider people and planet in every decision. So if you're choosing a new wine, where's it from? How's the wine made? Do they look after their workers and the land? How are you going to get it here? That's a really big decision on selecting a new wine. But if you're just popping out to get a sandwich at lunchtime, think about where you're buying it from and why are you buying it from there. So just thinking about it, just having it in your conscience.
Great, thank you. I want to say thank you to all four of the panelists. It's been really helpful for me to get my head more around the whole big picture of sustainability. It's been really helpful, I hope, for everybody who's either watching this live or watching the video back. Do please get in touch with us if you need more help, or you want some more information, or you want pointing towards various resources. Toby's put his website up on the in the chat there, so if people have want to get in touch with the Sustainable Roundtable, Sustainable Wine Roundtable, then please do also do that. We're here to help. We're not here to, this today is not about selling wine. It's not about one company being better than another company. It's about trying to ensure that the wine trade covers all parts of the wine trade when we talk about sustainability, and to try and ensure that we have a wine trade, and we have vineyards, and we have a planet, and we have a society and a culture that our children can take on from us, and our grandchildren can take on from them. That is one that we want to leave them with, or is certainly less messed up than it is now, if we can do that. So I hope you found today useful or helpful. Sorry again for the technicalities and the technical problems we had at the start. But that's the end of the thing. Unless anybody has any questions, if you've got a question, please do pipe up. Otherwise, we'll end the seminar now. We'd love to hear feedback too. So do drop Felicity a note. If there are things you'd like us to come back and say, let's do another sustainability seminar on, let's focus on this, let's focus on that, then let us know. Because we're very open to doing more, and I know Andrew from Harper's is on the call. They're doing a whole heap of sustainability things there too. So we really hope that there's just going to be this massive amount of information. Some of that will need a bit of distilling, but we just hope that ultimately everybody ends up in a better place tomorrow than we are today. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Ta-da.